broadcast night. Dance to the rhythm, let it flow. Here comes the ripple effect, let's go.
Welcome to the
Ripple Effect.
Hey, Gene.
Hey, guys.
How you doing, bud?
I'm good.
Hey,
Mr. Raymond, how are you?
Good to see you.
Yeah, man.
Mighty fine. Fine
yeah.
like frog hair.
All right, guys.
Fine like frog hair.
That's mighty fine, by the way.
That is mighty fine.
Fine like frog hair. That would be really fine hair.
Good alliteration,
Because
Raymond.
no one sees frog hair.
Nobody sees frog hair.
Yeah. that
Period.
Gotta look really close.
Guys, happy Fat Tuesday.
Yeah, man.
Glad to be here on the Ripple Effect with you guys.
Anybody participate in Lent? Are you Catholic?
No, not.
You?
Not Catholic.
you, right?
No. Lutheran.
Yeah, I grew up Catholic, but I don't think I ever.
Listen,
cut
anybody
out
can
meat.
appreciate Fat Tuesday.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think a lot of people. So I was at work and I was like, "Oh man, it's a Mardi Gras." You know, I was like, "Hey, we're gonna go out to Stanley Marketplace. You guys should come, whatever." And then I was like, you know, because they're like, "Oh, well, what's Mardi Gras?" I was like, "Well, Ash Wednesday. You know, Lent starts." And they were like, "What?" You know.
Nobody knows.
Well, that's why we have Mardi Gras. No one put it together. So if you're not from Louisiana, I guess you don't really put two and two together.
You're
So it's
missing out.
your day of like indulgence
Yeah.
before Lent.
Before you got to crack down and just do fish only on Friday.
No meat on Fridays.
You gotta give
which
up
is
stuff.
easy in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Because they just fry fish and crawfish. And,
Great seafood.
Bro.
Everywhere.
Fridays are lit.
Yeah.
Where I grew up,
I bet.
at every plate lunch place, you know, every
Yeah.
restaurant. I mean, we'll start seeing the pictures. I'll show you.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, man, happy Fat Tuesday. You know, happy Mardi Gras.
Happy Mardi Gras.
Beautiful day.
I
New
know.
Orleans is kicking right now.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. It's
that place
quiet
is,
here.
That place is on fire. So, yeah, what do you guys, sorry, I feel like I kind of crashed your,
No,
Well,
not
it's
at
all
all.
good. Yeah, we were going to talk about caller ID display in the call center environment. It's something that's been increasingly. Actually, you know what, Noah? I would say if it wasn't for COVID, you know, the disruption that COVID had caused,
right?
the caller ID issue within the call center is just about as disruptive because over the years, the American public have gotten, and we've talked about this, right? The American public, they're tired of unwanted phone calls and unsolicited phone calls. And with the way that the legislation and the telcos are trying to protect the consumers, right? There's this spam flagging that goes on. And so to protect the consumers about from unwanted phone calls, the accounting of number of spam incidences is on the rise.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something also, like, you're talking about that. How exactly does that work? So, like, the reporting of spam, how do you stop fraudulent reports or even, like, people who would target your business systematically, like a competitor, to go out? Like, is that something that goes on? Or to me, I just feel like, because they'll ask you, is this spam? It's very easy to say something spam, and it may not be spam. You might just be in a bad mood,
All right,
and you mark it as spam. How does that affect you?
So let's set down a very specific market example.
Yeah.
All right. Debt collection.
Right.
A huge market.
Right.
A couple $1 billion a year. Now, you get a phone call from a debt collector and you mark it spam. Are you able to collect on that debt now?
Ooh.
So the call center business, from a debt collection perspective, is an easy way to reach out to debtors and say, hey, you got a bill. You got to pay the bill. Some people don't even know. Some people just think, you know, they went to the doctor, everything is good. They got their knee worked on or whatever. And they left a couple $1,000 bill with the doctor. They just keep ignoring the whatever. They move, whatever the situation is. Debt collection shops are set up to find those people, skip trace them, find out where they moved to, make the contact. Hey, you have a couple $1,000 bill at Kaiser or whatever, right? Whatever health insurance provider or carrier you're using, or you owe some money. Well, if you keep marking it spam, they can't get a hold of you. They can mail you, but that's not very effective. You get somebody on the phone and say, you have a debt. Are you denying it or not? Right. Because that's one of the big first steps. Is it your debt? Right. And you can say it's not my debt, and then you can send a letter, it's not my debt. Or they have to send you a letter and say, here's the proof of the debt. Okay. But if you can't reach that first party, if you can't reach that contact, then that debt is in the ether until it's charged off.
Right.
Right. And then everybody pays for your debt, not just the debtor doesn't get off scot-free necessarily either, but now everybody has to pick up that bill.
Right. It's subsidized through government, whatever. I get
Okay, so the
that
spam
everybody's
flagging-
insured in one way or another.
Yeah,
Every industry
exactly.
above us is insured so that in the end they don't lose all their money.
The losses aren't that big.
The American public assumes the burden of a lot of these debts.
So Umail, Spam Blocker, Robocaller, all these apps that you can download and put on your phone, and you can just mark things spam. They'll have databases of phone numbers now that have been marked spam or good. Okay, just for simplicity, it's a lot more complicated than that. But then these databases then sell subscription services to telecom providers to then subscribe and then look at this database to determine whether or not it's a spam call. And then the telecom provider makes a choice whether or not to even make the phone call. Okay, so it's a serious infringement on the First
So it's
Amendment.
based on risk factor. They determine whether they're going to make this call again.
It's based
'Cause
on money.
Money and analytics.
How much you're going to pay for that subscription.
Mostly money.
It's always based on money. If they don't have to make the phone call and you're on a monthly subscription for your Verizon or your Sprint or your T-Mobile or whatever you're on, does it make any sense for them to make that phone call if they're not going to make any more money?
Right.
No. If they're going to save more money but not tying up their switch or tying up phone lines and then still charging the same amount every month, $59.99, unlimited free calling, now they just made a couple more pennies and a couple more. And that happens a couple hundred times a month. Now they made a couple bucks. How many subscribers do they have? 25 million, 100 million, whatever it is. Okay, now you see where it's going.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to make a couple $1 million a month not making phone calls.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Increase their bottom line just by, keeping their infrastructure free.
Yeah, because you know what I've noticed too? I've been with Verizon forever.
Yeah.
At this point, 20 years. I keep saying I'm going to switch. There's got to be a better deal out there.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's hard. But lately, they have been offering me this service also, like for fraud protection and spam protection. And I click on, they were like, oh, try the free trial. But then after that, I figured,
$5.99.
it's like, oh, you're going to do this. And then after 30 days, if you don't cancel it, right, it's like $5.99.
So then they
a month.
make money on the front end.
Is that something that you think is worth it? Like what,
No.
Right? Is that a service that I need? I don't feel like I need that. I feel like I'm getting along just fine without it.
You don't need it.
If you want to help line their pockets, you can.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to what you were talking about, this call centers, and what were you talking about? The ID?
Well, just the caller ID. The call centers, they display the caller ID on
phone
each
number.
phone call.
Right.
Right. And it's a multifaceted program. Noah, absolutely, you're right on target. But that's a big avenue for the spam flagging. But there's also at the telco level, they're watching the traffic coming into their network, and they see an auto dialer, pounding on
They
the
see
same
patterns.
number.
They're looking
Right.
for patterns.
Right. And they can set thresholds, and then they're the ones on their network, and they can say, oh, that looks like a spam call. And so then in the future, they start denying that call.
And making money.
Right.
Anyway, so this is a problem. This is not just our customer base. This is across the country.
Right. It's a
Global.
It's an
actually.
epidemic.
Global. It's an epidemic. So, listen, the way to contact people, and especially in debt collections, and that's such a great example because you need to be able to get a hold of these people. Another one is schools, right? So the automated school messaging, I guarantee it's showing up as spam. Not all the time, but sometimes we're getting those automated calls and it's just spam calls.
well, now mine has been potential spam,
potential spam.
and then
You know why? Let's walk through that for a second. Say you have a snow day. Say we were going to have a snow day today,
Right.
which all the kids were hoping for.
no way.
Yeah. They were like, oh, we're going to get a foot of snow, except
So not here, guys.
not here.
Talking about the mountains.
Or south,
Yeah.
right? Monument.
Castle Rock.
Castle
Castle
Rock.
Rock, yeah.
Castle Pines. They all got a bunch of snow piled on them today. But you need to send out that broadcast to your community of, 800 kids in the school or 700 kids in the school. Well, if you do that, more than 50 calls per hour, you're going to get flagged. That phone number is going to get flagged as potential spam. And now people aren't getting the messages. Remember when parents all showed up and tried to drop their kids off that one Monday and there was no school because that message didn't get out to
Oh
everybody?
yeah, till like way late. Yeah,
Till
got
way,
out.
way late. Or even after school started, they're
Right.
like, oh, there's no school today.
Right.
Right. They had some messaging that probably went out that was either text or a phone call, and it it got blocked along the way somewhere. That's my guess. I don't know for sure, but that's my guess is what happened because their messaging is usually pretty good at our school, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say. Look, it's debatable.
It's debatable. So this is the problem. This is the problem. You make phone calls over a network and using the same caller ID for more than a certain number of calls per interval of time. We don't know what that is because every telecom company has their own rules. They made them up. The nerds in the back room are like, well, maybe it's 50 calls an hour. Maybe some are like 80, 30, 20.
Well, they probably had some negative experience somewhere, and they're like, hey, let's set it at this many.
And
Hey,
they've
I don't
had
know.
personal experience too, right?
That's what I mean.
And
Yeah.
just recently in January, what was it? AT&T, they changed out their algorithm, and the spam flag calls went off the charts. You know, you look at the graph, it's like up and up and up, and then until about the second week of February, there must have been a lot of pushback, and then it dropped back down to more level,
Right.
you know, the normal level of spam flagging on the AT&T network. So they had made a change to make it more strict. And then they rolled it back because, you know, Noah, you touched on it earlier. It's
Yeah.
infringing on First Amendment rights
Absolutely.
of communication,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, they're keeping people from communicating, which that's a very, like, hey, if I can't make a phone call, if I can't make 50 phone calls from my cell phone to promote my business or a nonprofit event or a snow event, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Right.
Why are we limiting communication from Americans to other Americans?
Well, this is just a classic case. It's over-regulation.
Over-regulation.
We're overly regulated
Yeah.
in pretty much every industry. I mean, right down to, you know, looking at doing some work at the house and the permits you have to pull. I was thinking like, oh, this is a great, I thought it was weird when I got to Colorado that you don't
Yeah.
have general contractor's license for the state. It goes by municipalities,
By region.
towns,
Yeah.
you know, cities, whatever.
County.
It's not even counties. It's like
City.
literally,
City by
like,
city.
you know, city by city. Or you can get these certain ones that'll cover abroad, like Denver, you know.
It'll cover a few
whatever.
cities.
And I thought, man, no. But that's kind of hard because what if you want to go do business somewhere else and I have to go there and pay for that one?
Yeah.
You know, whereas like Florida, I had a contractor's license there. It's for the whole state of Florida. Once you pass that test,
Right.
which is a rigorous test,
You know how to build
what
stuff.
I mean. I can build stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas they're like, oh, it's kind of. But anyway, you go look at like doing a build out somewhere here at the house, and you're like, ew, the permits they want and the bureaucracy. Like,
And
just-
then of course the permit fee is
fees,
2%
and then-
of the job total.
and then careful, you know. Yeah, and then it's like
Yeah.
also careful because look, you know, if we come to do this inspection, you better be jammed up jelly tight.
Yeah.
You better hope the inspector's not in a bad mood,
Right.
you know,
Because you can always find something.
because they'll find something or
You
they
can
won't,
always find
you know, and
an
they're
inspector
like,
can always find something.
but regulation across every industry is all I'm saying. It's like it's a problem, you
Yeah.
know. I know it's there to protect people,
Right.
but at some point it's about money also, and it's about control.
So that's where we're at here in the telecom world,
Ah.
right? It's a slightly overregulated, in my opinion. They could probably roll back a little bit. They could continue to fine and penalty people that are, you know, violating this law. We've had competitors go out of business because they won't adhere to certain practices of stir shaking, which is a handshake mechanism with a telecom provider to say, this is a trusted number. We're sending you a trusted caller ID number. We would like you to deliver the traffic on this. And we have
what-
to pay for that.
And that's the only thing that makes it that is the fact that you pay them.
We have to pay that.
That's what makes it a trusted number.
That's right.
Is that you paid.
We pay.
If you don't pay, it's not a trusted number.
That's right. And there's some providers out there that aren't.
And there's people doing shady business, but if they pay for that trusted
Yeah.
stamp of approval,
Yeah.
then they continue to do business.
Well, and let's just say there's 1,000 telecom providers, small providers like our space. It's probably more than 1,000. I would assume maybe a couple, and everybody has to pay $2,000. All right, so now you got a stream of revenue
And that's per year?
per year.
Up
Per
to
year.
how many and how many
It's just it's calendar year, so it doesn't
but I mean,
matter how many.
doesn't matter how
channels you're
big your company is?
using. Nope,
That's just a standard
gotta pay.
operating cost
you got to pay.
for that.
It's two organizations you have to pay, right? So it's one to do the approval to get to the place where you get a signature, a key that you can send on your calls, and then it's the people that add the key to your calls to send it out. So it's two organizations.
That's wow. Well, I mean, it's not surprising.
But what it does do, so there's pros and cons. The pro is it keeps out the bad players a little.
Maybe.
A little. Because then they have to come to the table and pay. Then they have to go through the process of, where's your business? Where's your business registration? Do you have a tax ID? Right? Do you have all of these things
All right.
that make you look like a legitimate company trying to do business in the United States? Right? Or whatever.
Now, does
state
that also, well, I guess it does, right? Because like even call centers that are formed outside of the country, like you were talking earlier about, a client, they're in
T-Mobile.
and then
Puerto Rico.
Right, but they're no, you were just talking about who?
In
They're
Guatemala.
Guatemala.
Yeah, but they're based out of
Offshore.
Texas, right?
Yeah.
Saying they're in Texas.
Yeah, they're-
So companies like that, even though, no matter where you operate, and once you come and you operate out of the U.S., or you say, and you have to be on board with that.
You have to have all
It's
your
like a
ducks in a row.
BBB stamp. Right?
Yeah, a BBB stamp. Or like Home
That's
Advisor.
the old school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
BBB was, boy, if you had that. When I was a kid back in like the 80s and
Yeah,
90s,
if you got that BBB.
boy, if you had that.
Yeah,
you
that was
were-
the gold standard.
That
of
was
the
the gold
trusted
standard.
business.
I don't even know if anybody's worried
Do you know how
about
much
that.
after you have to pay for that A rating on BBB? Yeah, it's a lot.
Didn't matter.
Do you,
huh?
you have a bad review on BBB? Oh, you want to take that off?
Yeah, pay for that.
How much is that?
Yeah, people used to put that on their windows, like brick and mortar
yeah,
stores.
absolutely.
That was, but which as you should, you know what I mean. If
And
you
now it's just
remember.
Facebook and Yelp and
Yeah, man.
whatever else. What's your rating?
Yelp. Yeah, dude.
I mean,
What
BBB
a-
is on its way out. I can't imagine.
Well,
that they
because it's
were-
old school.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
sure.
If they would have transitioned to an online type of deal, like a social media standard,
Yeah.
like just turned around and taken that brand and
Here's
went,
the BBB app.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and been like Yelp.
Yeah.
When they saw Yelp, they should have done BBB. That style.
They were probably thinking, that Yelp's not going to
Yeah, it's
catch
not
on.
going to be around. We've been around since the 80s. All right, boomer.
Exactly. So that's what we're talking about, man.
I mean,
this sort of
Look, that's why I wanted to come sit in with you guys. Like, man, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've been around call centers long enough. I've watched Vicky. That was another part. They would
Yeah.
build and manage their own call centers. They'd have 40 people at a time working for one company.
support.
Like their call center for their company,
Yeah.
was like sometimes 40, maybe more people. I'm sure the last one, until they started outsourcing that
Of course.
to call centers. But for a while, yeah, she has, I knew Shannon well, Shannon Jocelyn, like she ran their call center, and yeah, she had, probably sometimes 50 people.
Yeah.
I'd go over there, I'd help them set up the offices and cubicles and, you know what I mean, spaces for them to work in.
Yep.
And so I always thought it was crazy, you know what I mean, what an industry that is to just, taking not a lot of positive calls.
Yeah.
That's the other space I think about you guys and like when call centers, because we've touched on that, about how just the people aren't calling when things are good. Yeah,
Sure.
they call when they need help, and it may not be for something bad. But I'm sure a majority of what call centers are dealing with are from a negative point of view.
That's
Well, here's the thing is, it really, and Raymond knows this as well as anybody, it spans from every part of the spectrum. Like it can be a customer service call inbound. It can be a debt collection call. Then let's say that's the two ranges, right? Customer service to debt collections. I need help. I'm trying to ignore you. One or the other.
Right.
Now we have other segments inside of that spectrum. One of them is we're going to organize a ride share for you to come pick you up and take you to your doctor. That's one of our customers.
Oh, all right.
Okay. They're getting spam flagged. They're calling patients that need ride share that are seniors or people that don't have family to help take care of them or take them to a doctor appointment. How are they going to get to a doctor appointment if they don't have a driver's license? If they have glaucoma? If they can't see? Okay, we're going to organize a ride share for you. But now you're going to spam flag that?
Well, I think that's the problem. Like I said, we talked about it last time. I was, talking with you guys, but like, there's when it comes to that space and that industry, there's this stigma on soliciting. Like, look, everyone has the sticker on their door, no soliciting. No
Right.
one wants you to walk up to their door anymore because we're not living in that time.
Right.
And then we went through this time of probably unregulated solicitations over the phone and people reaching out, and now you guys are dealing with the rebuilding of that space,
Yeah.
of that industry, and trying to make it so that people are more receptive, but they're not. People automatically, like I said, I feel like I'm the same way, but if I see potential spam coming through,
You're not taking the call.
I'm either not taking the call or I'm taking the call just to mess with them,
Sure.
and to see how far this goes. Because there are And then there's the whole like stereotype of like people targeting seniors. I could see where
Yeah.
where you're a rideshare service targeting like, that demographic, where people would automatically assume that you're targeting them based off of
They're not taking the call.
their social status, right? They're seniors, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
probably more vulnerable and blah, blah, blah. And so it's easy for somebody to be like, that's spam. There's no way they want to help you. No one's here to help anybody these days.
I know, right?
So what an uphill battle that must be.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and even we had a customer that was just trying to verify that human beings existed for Blue Cross Blue Shield. We just want to touch base, make sure you're a human being, you're still around, you're still on our platform, you're still getting services from us, right? Those were getting spam flagged. Those were getting spam flagged. A customer calling on behalf of Blue Cross Blue Shield to verify that those human beings existed were getting spam flagged.
So I'm hearing all of this, and obviously my next question, well, maybe not, but like, what do you guys do? Like, how do you combat all that?
Great segue.
Yeah.
That's a
Thank
great
you, sir.
point.
How are you going to combat
And
that?
actually,
Let's talk about
we
it.
should also say that
Yeah, please.
within Noah and I, we've seen the ebb and flow through the
Right.
years, right? There's, and especially like I love the analogy of, or using the debt collection industry.
Yeah.
Because the legitimate players in the space were monitoring and managing themselves. They were not being abusive of, those people that they were calling.
Right.
But it's the bad actors, and that's classically, as we were talking earlier, I was
Yeah.
thinking about, it's the bad actors that are ruining it for the good players, right?
Yep.
My healthcare provider, my school, etc. Right? Because of bad actors have created this environment
Right.
where people are hesitant to pick up their phone, and like you say, yeah, what a terrible way to start the call with spam likely, and here I am as a service provider trying to help, and the people are already negatively, inclined to, not pick up the phone or to
Right, but what
Be distrustful.
whether you put potential spam or the actual
Spam flag.
or like, no, I'm saying like, so like he's saying, if it's whatever,
Sure.
whoever the call's coming from, whether you do owe debts or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you actually put who it was, they're not going to answer that call.
Right.
Right. And then if you put potential spam, you
The-
may have more of a chance of getting them, but you're still not going to answer the call. When I
Probably
see
not.
potential spam, I just assume I don't owe anyone or anything
Sure.
negative. So I'm not in that space in my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when I see it, I assume it's someone trying to offer me something that I assume I don't need.
or
you know.
want, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I also, that's what I was wondering too, is like, how did we get to a point where they started putting potential spam? Why not just put the phone number? Why not just put who it's from? But that's a huge space that I know nothing about.
Well, and see, a lot of that can get overwritten too. So it's CNAM, customer name and something. It's a database of phone numbers linked with names.
Right.
Okay. Well, now you can just pass that through the SIP header. You can, from a nerd perspective, you can just pass it through the call information, and then the end carrier will pick it up and just put it on the screen.
Okay.
Okay. So you can put in like Mardi Gras, and a phone number, and Mardi Gras will show up on the screen. Not all the time, but sometimes. Right. So it just depends on what that far end device is. If it's a landline, obviously you're not going to get that.
Right.
Caller ID from an old perspective. Remember those little caller ID boxes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You never would get the caller ID in that first ring, would you?
No, it would take 2 rings
That's
because
right.
it had to process. Or was it?
No, because it came through between the first and the second ring. There was a data stream that actually reached that box from the telco perspective to send that information through, right? And then you would get it right before the second ring occurred. It would say mom, or it would say, Gene or Noah or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because they would have to go to the database, look it up, and then send it back to the caller ID, that little square. Now those little squares don't exist anymore.
Right.
Right. But they did. And then sometimes they would attach to your TV, like if you're a Comcast Spectrum customer or, whatever cable provider you were using, they tapped into that caller ID mechanism, and then they could produce it and put it on your screen. Oh, Noah's calling.
Huh.
Right. And then you could do your voice over IP phone. You could pick that up and you can talk to them because that was coming through your cable service, but they still gave you a wire to plug your phone in.
Right.
Right. That's how caller ID worked.
Ah.
Forever.
Yeah, I remember.
Forever. And then, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9, 10 years ago, that started to change. Where you weren't waiting between rings because you have this. Right. And this either has the phone number, the caller ID in your database on your phone right now, and it can say, hey, Gene's calling. and it's immediate, right? It's not first and second ring, but
Right.
it used to be. Even on this device, I don't know if you remember when they were older, you would have the caller ID name wouldn't show up.
Right.
It would just be the phone number, and then eventually it would pop in.
Because
Same
it had
thing.
to process.
It had to look at a database
Right.
and identify
Process that information.
what phone number was attached to that name, and then pass the name through. But all that kind of happens now during the call setup process. You set up a call and you send Raymond's phone number and his name all in the call setup string, and then the end carrier just says, "Oh, okay, it's from Raymond. Here's his phone number." Just
That's
put it
a
on the
lot
screen.
of information. So who could? Anyway.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of nerd stuff, man.
Well, it's just then I started thinking like, well, who puts all that in there and how individual and everything. I could see now why they're like, oh, potential spam.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on back there.
There's a lot
There's a
going
lot
that it's
going
just
on.
hard to process all of it.
Okay, now let's pretend you're a bad actor.
Not hard.
Just pretend. Just pretend you're a call center in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And you want to sell health insurance.
Yeah.
You're going to put in Kaiser. You're going to put in Health One, United. You put whatever you want. And then people are going to pick that phone call up and they're going, oh, it's time for you to re-up on your health insurance, and whether or not it's legitimate or not. You're going to get on the phone with somebody that's pretending to maybe be somebody that you might have worked with in the past that might be your healthcare provider, to then renew your subscription or put you into a call center that's going to tie you into a new health insurance plan.
Right.
Right. So that's the problem.
I think it would be hard too. I mean, man, the more you talk, the more it makes me think too. I bet it's a hard space also. But just with everything that's done online now,
Yeah.
it's like I have that option to just go online, log in, create my login. Now I have access to database platforms. Like
Yeah.
you're talking about health insurance. I could just set a call in someone because I know I'm not going to get anyone.
Right.
Right. I'm going to get these AI bots that we've talked about, and they're going to help me through everything. And they're getting better at it. I dealt with one, last week. I was like, look at you, bud.
Yeah. Was it a health insurance call? Or
It was health
call?
insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing something. And it's funny, I got really far.
Yeah.
With something that I knew my insurance wasn't going to cover. I was just curious to see how far it would go and if they would, do a little something.
Yeah.
But I got really far, and they ended up covering somehow. And I never talked to an actual person. They
Right.
walked me through everything, But I'm sure now, like with call centers and stuff, people are probably a little, less receptive to some of this also, because dude, I can go do this online.
Yeah.
I can go try anyway. And, which you guys are in that industry too, because you do, right? The
It's the
bots.
nature of
Yeah.
business, right?
It's the nature of
There's
business. So it's like on one
continual
hand you're
change.
battling this on this side, and then you're plugged in with the other side too with
no.
just the AI bots and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
So we're gonna take an example here. We're gonna look at Texas. All right. So Texas alone has got, I don't know, I'm gonna say 12 area codes. I know it's probably a little bit more than that. Just the Houston area has got 5, right? Galveston's 1, 2, 7, 8, 9. Probably 15 area codes in Texas, if I'm not taking time to count them all.
yeah.
Okay, and somebody's trying to reach somebody in Dallas. Well, Dallas doesn't have an immense number of area codes. It has a few. Okay, now, if you want to try and call, here's Dallas. So what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Some are outside, close to Denton. Plano's got its own. Dallas has got 4 individual, and then there's a couple subsidiary codes over here. All right, so you try and call somebody from Dallas. What's the highest opportunity from somebody from Dallas to pick up the phone? Is it a toll-free number? Probably not. 888, 800. You're not picking that up.
You got to pick up your local area code.
You're going to pick up your local area code. So what has been going on for the last 8 to 10 years? We've been providing local caller ID area codes for regions that customers want to be reached in or need to be reached in,
Okay.
right?
Where there's a higher level of trust because
Right.
they
Because that's
it
what you
could
want.
be someone. That's
Yeah.
right. They do want.
Because even though they don't recognize the actual number, that area code is familiar to them.
Oh, it's 214.
Yeah.
It's a 469.
Yeah.
It's a 972. 972 was the big one, back in the early 2000s. 972, that was Dallas.
Yeah.
That was Texas in general. If somebody called you from a 972 number, you lived in Texas, you're probably picking up the phone.
Right.
Hey, what's the problem? Hey, it's this Noah. What can I, whatever.
That or Houston.
Yeah, Houston
But-
or whatever. Okay, so let's say that you've got a list of
Okay.
20,000 people you got to reach in Dallas, and you get 50 uses of that phone number per day before you get marked as spam. Now, let's say you're not going to contact all 20,000 people in Dallas at the same time.
Right.
Let's just say you're going to spread that out a little bit in the morning.
But still, 50 times.
You get 50 phone calls on a caller ID before you get marked spam. And that's just
Per day?
Average per day.
24 hours.
24 hours.
Yeah.
You got to think like the nerds in the telecom.
Right.
Right. Okay. How are they writing the queries on the database? We're gonna look for this phone number. We're gonna look for any phone numbers, and account occurrence within a 24-hour period of time. Maybe it's even less. Maybe it's 8, 12. We don't know.
It's probably a combination within a 24-hour period, within a 3-hour period, and within a 1-hour period.
So they got these
Right.
metrics, these intervals that they're measuring these.
And if you
these
hit
callers.
any of those,
Spam,
bam.
bam, and it might be the best, most. You're trying to give money away. Let's say you're trying to give money away. It doesn't matter.
None of that matters.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Now, you can pay services to whitelist your phone numbers, which the telecom providers will look at and then white flag your number, but you'll still over exceed a certain threshold. So they've got the paid, right? And maybe that's 200 calls per day. But if you go over 201, you're still going to mark spam. Still.
Right.
And you've already paid to whitelist your phone number. You've already paid somebody to say, I'm legitimate. I'm doing the things that I'm promoting myself to do. I'm providing a service to the community, whatever.
But that doesn't matter
Doesn't
if
matter.
you hit these metrics.
Doesn't
right?
matter.
In a negative way. If you hit these.
That's right. Even if you paid.
Right.
And there's people that are paying $50,000, $60,000 a month to whitelist phone numbers.
Well,
And they're
I
still
know.
getting
I have
spammed
some. I know some people doing business now, and it's been a thing with them too, getting
Getting
spammed.
That's right.
They're like, "How are we getting spammed?" You know?
Yeah.
Constantly hear this powwow. Like,
Exactly.
how's this happening? Like, we're paying, so and so, and like, but now that you say it, that makes a lot of sense because it's like, well, there's these metrics involved, right? And what, like how you said, yeah, you can use this phone number 50 times.
Yeah.
But if you use it a certain amount of time within 3 hours or 1 hour, then all of a sudden you check a box that spams you.
You roll over that flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So here's an example, right?
what do you guys?
We'll keep track. And Ray, do you want to digress? Do you want to go into this at all? Or do you want me to talk this through?
You're doing great, Noah. Then run with it, man.
All right, I'm going to run with it for a little bit, and you chime in when you need to. All right, so area code 201, right? And then there's a particular number. It's been
Right, redacted
blurred
for-
out for the innocent, right? But so 0 calls on that, 1 call on this one, 10 calls on this 214 number. All right, wherever 214 is in Texas, we don't know exactly, but we know it's probably in a metro area likely.
Yep. Dallas, Fort Worth.
Dallas, Fort Worth. Thank you, Ray. And then, so this is at 10 calls. Probably still cool. But you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 phone numbers for that 214 area code to plan for no more than 50 calls per day. Okay, so now our software will actually roll through and use the next number, and then go round robin to the top and use the next.
So you have multiple 214 numbers.
That's right. Exactly.
And you're going to use these, and each one of those numbers can do 50 calls.
That's right.
And so you're cycling through that. All right.
Exactly. So on a day-to-day basis, depending on what your load is, if we're using an example of 20,000 calls in the Dallas metro area, maybe you'll be able to get through 800 calls on the 214 area codes.
Right.
Because you have 4 of them. Right?
Right.
Maybe.
If you don't trip some.
If you don't trip some flag,
Yeah.
some flag somewhere in a database that the nerds are putting together. So we'll have a list of these phone numbers.
And how do you?
And they'll match up with phone numbers that are being dialed, and there's software in between that will change the number prior to going to the telecom provider.
And how are you? So how do you acquire these phone numbers? Like, are you?
You got to buy them.
Right. So you're buying these phone numbers. This is a line. Obviously, I mean that's
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
it's the
additional
assumption.
business
Right.
expense. It's
Right.
actually it's an expense that has gone up, right? Because this was not such an issue 5 years ago. I could run with 1/10 of the number of caller IDs on my system. Now I need more to be able to combat this problem. All those bad actors have come in and they've sort of poisoned the waters, and so now I have to load balance the calling that I'm doing.
Yeah. It's all about, at this point, it's all about money.
Right.
Yeah. Who can pay to balance out the regulation?
Well, that's
Who
why I
would
was
pay?
asking. So, like, when you talk about paying $2,000 or whatever it was a year, right, for this one
That's just
rating,
providers.
for this provider rating.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but how many numbers can you run under that provider rating? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So you pay for that rating,
Then you got to buy the numbers.
then you got to buy the numbers.
Yeah.
That's a separate fee.
That's right.
So, dude, just the plot.
We're given the permission and the privilege to be able to sign
Right.
and say, this is, Acme Corp, and it's a legitimate business.
Right,
and
right, right.
We can send those calls out.
And then
Yeah.
from there,
Yeah.
however big you want, however many numbers is what
We
you
have
wanna
customers
spend.
with 10,000 numbers.
Holy moly.
10,000 numbers. Just to combat this particular thing. And they're being successful, but they're cutting into their net rev, right? So now their net revenue is, down 2 or 3% per year just because they have to support all of this other infrastructure in order to deliver phone calls.
What is
Nationwide, yeah.
where does this come from though when we talk about this regulation and like
It came from the FCC.
right, and that's what I was about to say. Like I know it's the FCC, but where does the money go? Like say follow the money.
Right into the telecom pockets. Who owns the phone numbers?
That
AT&T,
oh,
Verizon, Level 3.
they don't even need my money. They don't need my money for
No.
the bill every
But
month.
they'll
They
take
got
it, yeah.
they have you guys. You got 10,000 phone numbers, bro.
Right.
You don't need me.
They don't.
That is wow.
Let's take an example here.
It's
too.
so funny. This is why I wanted to sit and
I know, I'm glad you
and
did.
kind of like chime in on this conversation because
It's good
I
for you to know too.
Yeah, I know that there's a big world out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it. You know what I mean? We all know it. But when you talk about things like this, like you start getting into the gears of a business like this. I said I've been around call centers before, but I never got into the specifics.
So now we've we got your beak wet a little
Right,
bit.
right.
Let's dig in a touch. Okay, so let's say we need a report. First of all, we're starting to get metrics back from carriers.
Okay.
So we're knowing whether or not the carrier is indicating it as a spam flag.
Carriers being the provider of these phone numbers.
That's right. We're getting a response back from the delivering carrier
Right.
that says we're going to reject your call, or we're going to deliver your call, but we're going to deliver it with spam flag.
Right.
Okay. So let's just take an example. So here's Verizon. Now this is actually, this is pleasantly delivering a lot of calls. Whatever customer this is that we're looking at. This is, the 13th of February. So it's relatively recent. But here's what Verizon is saying so far. So spam per day, right? They're starting to report to us.
Right.
This particular phone or this particular caller ID in 702, which is Nevada, is getting 10 spams per day on 25 calls. On 25. So
Right.
we don't know if the threshold for that was an hour, 2 hours, 3. We don't know exactly.
Right.
But we know what we're getting back. Now, the first 20 calls or the first 15 calls that went out were probably fine. Now we're starting to get spam flag on every call sent out of this caller ID. Right. So immediately going to diminish your possibility to get a connected party.
Right.
Right. This one is a great example too. So 6 spam per day on 37 calls. It's probably not bad. It's green. Maybe it's going to be okay.
Right.
Maybe you're going to get a decent
Green
contact
is
rate on
good.
that. Green is okay. Green is
Not
okay.
saying it's great.
Well, ideally, you're not having any.
You don't want
spam.
zero. You want zero.
You want zero.
You want 0.
Right. But okay, so how do you get the metrics on why you got 10 spam calls per 25 calls?
But we don't get the why. They don't send you the why.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So from your side,
We
how
have
do
to compile this data. We have to store it in a
So
database.
you have to create. You have to
our
analyze
developer
and get your own
staff,
metrics.
Our developer staff had to develop these tools, these charts, to identify what is spam and then how we're going to mitigate it.
Oh.
Okay, so now our customers will get an email. You've got a caller ID group on spam. What do you want to do? Do you want to replace? Do you want to rest it? Do you want to change that number? You want to change the whole group of numbers? What would you like to do? Because it's not really our decision for their business. Let's say they have a number that's a 702 number that they've used on marketing forever, right? On mail pieces or marketing pieces, cards they've sent out. They're like a supplement company
Right.
that you might know of. And they've, on their pieces, they've had a toll-free number for their entire life of their business. And now they can't get phone calls out to their customer base to maybe announce a new product or talk to them about what their customer called in on. The customer called in and say, I have a problem with this cream or with this whatever. Now they can't even reach the customer because their number has been used more than 25 times per day. Okay, so you're sort of really starting to get the picture here. So we built these reports. We start to build the analytics and the metrics to identify how many times we're getting spam back. And then we're starting to identify certain carriers that are sending us their response codes back. So we can pick out the carrier, we can pick out their code, and then we can compile that data and then present it on charts and reports.
And so, all right, my other question is, so when you do get this, like, so it's all different companies, right? That you have. They're getting spam. Do you have any control over what's being sent out?
Yeah.
Or are you just controlling the traffic of those calls?
We have a little bit, right? We can send the C name. We can send a name, the caller ID name. We can
Right.
send that through the call string, and that will show up sometimes on some devices. Not all the time.
Right.
Depending on what T-Mobile wants to strip out.
Right.
Depending on what Verizon wants to strip out. Depending on what any other carriers want to strip out. Right. They get to make those choices.
Yeah, we send out every phone call with the caller ID that's legitimate, that's for that, it belongs to that client account. So we send it out 100% of the time. But what's the delivery rate at the far end when you receive that call on your cell phone? Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a spam type designation.
Right.
Sometimes the call doesn't go out at all.
Right.
Sometimes they just block the call. Dead air. In fact, not only do they do that, they block the call and then charge us a toll for the block call.
Well, of course.
Yeah. So they're not going to deliver the call and they're going to charge us.
Yeah.
How fun is that? Yeah. That's profit right there.
Yeah, it is.
That's profit.
Well, they have all the control.
That's profit. Yeah.
Right.
So, and then there's no standardization for this.
Right.
They all
That's
made
why
up,
it's like you start thinking, it's like, that's why I'm like, man. And so as far as like, so these companies that utilize your services,
yeah.
Are they the offenders?
They're not really offenders at all.
Right? Like, that's what I mean. It's like, well, how
We're
do
the
you,
good
how do you
actors.
source out, how this all happens? Like, well, how does it happen? But
Yeah.
there's really, so then you guys have to go through and try. Now you are figuring out
Yeah.
these solutions.
And
right?
not
How
just
do we,
us.
Not
I
just
mean,
you, obviously.
but for the last
so that's your
5
job
years.
also. Like, not
Yeah.
only to provide a service, but to also provide solutions for the negative impacts of this service.
Of the regulation.
Right, of this regulation that you deal with.
That's right.
Where do you see this going? Like, do you see this industry getting less regulation in the future or more regulation?
This is actually a really good segue too. We're going to cover a couple of these last charts, and then we're going to talk about that because we're talking about one-to-one marketing, and you're going to like this topic too because we're talking about lists and how you generate lists,
Right.
and how people generate lists at like conventions and shows and.
Oh, speaking of that, remind me of that. There's one coming here at a Gaylord. It's not really, but it's like an entrepreneurial thing.
Oh,
I
fun.
wanted to touch base with you. I was like, it may be fun just to go walk around.
To go check it out.
I forget who's going to be there.
Yeah,
But I thought, especially for you guys,
I know.
it's nothing but
There's always
entrepreneurs.
interesting things happening.
And right down the
People that are
road, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, you're going to have
Absolutely.
thousands of business people.
Decision makers
Yeah.
who are, they're not.
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ram. Oh, he's coming.
He's coming to the Gaylord.
Oh, that's cool.
They're having like a 5-day event.
So we'll provide charts like this. It's just our part of the same
All
sort
right,
of
yeah, there's a
dashboard,
little measurement.
right? So you get some measurements here. Obviously, things that stand out are supposed to draw your attention, and they clearly do. So a quick dashboard of a column chart. Same sort of chart we were looking at. 7-day trend of hits. Okay, so let's say somebody had a number of spam hits at 100 per day on the 28th of February, and all of a sudden their hits went way down. Did they reorganize their caller ID groups? Did they order some new phone numbers from us? Did they, this is a positive result here because now Verizon's not responding so much back with spam. Maybe they got a new group of numbers. Right?
Unfortunately, that graph is representing the weekend. It's coming into the weekend when they're not dialing. So
Okay, so that
it resumes back. It dips down during the weekend when there's no calling or limited
so
calling,
that's-
and then
that's-
it goes back and it resumes.
All right, that's
because those
normal.
numbers were spam flagged last week. They're still going to be spam flagged this next week. You need to let your numbers rest for a bit. You let them rest for a couple of weeks, few weeks, and that way when you start using them again, those spam flag designations, and this is not gospel, but it's just, it comes back to these telcos get to set their own thresholds, their own limits,
Their own rules.
their
Right.
own rules for what is a spam flag number.
And you saying so once a number gets warmed up and in that spam space,
You have to rest it.
you have to rest it and let it cool off?
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, because there might be a 14-day window where they're paying attention to that phone number.
Where it's on a list.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if this pops up immediately.
Now, let me paint
That
the picture.
is-
Let me paint the picture for you. In the United States, we make about 1 billion phone calls a day.
Okay.
Okay. Now, in order to keep all of that traffic on a singular database that you can reference, that'd be very, very difficult for long periods of time. So they have to keep shorter metrics of data, like 7-day, 14-day, because now that database is 14 billion records in 7 days or 14 days. Right? So it's 1 billion a day, 14
Right,
days.
right.
14 billion records there. 14 billion records is really hard to look up. You can't just say, hey, I need information on this phone number and get it back instantaneously. So now they have a database issue that they have to deal with. So they can only keep rolling data of maybe 7 to 14 days.
Right, because it's just too much. It
It's too much.
compiles.
So if you rest a phone number and you're outside of that 14-day range, now
Too
you're
much
not
for
in,
them.
you're not
right.
in the database.
There's too much for them to keep up with.
That's right. These
Huh.
are the games. The games that we've
Oh my Lord.
determined.
So then
this
it-
is trial and error, by the
Yeah,
way.
this is observed
So-
behavior.
Observed behavior.
So it lets me know too that then that's the loophole for those shady guys.
For the shady characters,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Those shady
Yeah,
guys.
don't tell them.
Well, but yeah, right. Don't tell them. But that's what
They're
gets
not
your
gonna watch
industry.
this.
That's what jades everybody on the industry. You know what
That's
I mean?
right.
It's like you have these people who know that. Obviously, everybody knows that you got to play the game. You know, don't hate the player, hate the game. Right?
Right, hate
Is
the
that
game.
what the?
It is.
You know, and
Thanks,
so that's
Taylor.
that.
Thanks, Taylor Swift.
Yeah. She said that.
Yeah, don't hate the player, just hate the game.
Yeah, she.
Guys,
What
give
a-
credit where credit
well, that's-
is due, huh?
But that's crazy too. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
like, but it makes perfect sense. I mean,
So those are the 4 basic, like, these 4 slides are going to give you the understanding of what we're dealing with.
right.
Right. Anyway,
You got a lot going on, bud.
now, let's open up this new FTC rule. FTC? FCC?
FCC.
Which one? The
FCC.
one-to-one?
Yeah.
The one-to-one
So
marketing
this is a
rule.
new rule that they've just come out with.
They
is what
tried
you're
to push
saying?
this through. So Raymond's going to have a little bit more detail for me, but I'm going to give you the very, very basic summary. So, Gene, you go to a show in Vegas and you fill out a card. You fill out a card, you're going to win a contest, whatever. And it says in the very fine writing at the bottom, and this is obviously very rudimentary and super old, but you fill out your information, you put your thing in a fishbowl. At the very bottom, it says, your information will be sold to as many people as we deem necessary.
Right.
Right. That goes away. One fill out to one company. Now you have to go do your own marketing to build your own list. You can't just go buy a list from somebody. You can't do that. You have to generate your own contact list. 1-to-1, they called this. So health insurance is a great example. You go on a Facebook and you like, or car insurance or house insurance or whatever. And you're like, I want health insurance or house insurance, or even Google, right? You just type in, we'll do it. We'll do this. This is a great example because I think these are probably still up and
So what? This is a new law that's going to come into effect.
lead funnels.
It was to go into effect on January 24th
Okay.
of this year. But the FCC said, oh, well, people had come and they had complained and said, hey, this is going to unduly impact my business. And I'm a small business and all, and there was actually, interestingly enough, there was a insurance coalition that went and fought this. And basically the
Here it is.
FCC.
Here's a great one.
There you
E-health. E-health insurance, right? And this was on page 2. This wasn't on page 1 anymore. So all the stuff on page 1 was Cigna, Aetna, direct contact to your marketplace. E-health is not, they don't provide health insurance. They're an aggregator of leads,
Okay.
right? So if
So
I click
any insurance company can use them to generate leads.
well, if I click on e-health and I put it in my information and then I want a contact back, right? And I
Oh, I
want,
see.
and I want 5, this is a lead funnel.
Right.
This is how
Right.
lead funnels work.
All right. Yeah.
And then I can buy that record from eHealth. They're saying you can't do that anymore.
Oh.
They were saying you couldn't do that.
So who?
anymore.
Well, you could, but then eHealth would only be allowed to sell your one lead, John Smith, to one consumer,
One time.
which is ruining their business because
But
they're used
that-
to selling it to 10 to 100
Doesn't
times.
that sound like? Doesn't that sound like first?
So who
infringement?
lobbied that? Seems like someone else is winning. Who else is winning?
Yeah.
If everyone else loses from, you know, a business standpoint, right?
Who's getting
because
it?
who benefits in the end?
Yeah. The definitely not the consumer, right?
Not the consumer.
That goes out the window.
Yeah.
So
But part of it,
let's steel man this.
which is super interesting though, right? Wasn't this ruling from the FCC to help protect the consumer, right? There's
Just
so
hurting them.
much, right? You know, there's so much, you know, like when it hits the senators' houses and their wives and their kids are complaining, I'm getting these unwanted phone calls. You
Yeah,
gotta
this is
do
how this
something about-"
happens.
This is how it happens.
Right, yeah, down
Some
at the
dinosaurs
ground
making a
level.
decision.
Yeah.
That's right.
Adam Schiff.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time about how look,
We do.
man, they're I hear it from people younger than me. It's so funny, you know, lately with politics the way it is. It's like I get people that are half my age, man, talking to me about politics, and I'm pleasantly surprised at people's point of view, and I think this election has woken people up, you know, to what's going on, and they see this like these older politicians and senators, like you just said, they come up with ideas that I don't think they realize how outdated these ideas
Right.
are. Like you should have thought of this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
This is an idea that should have been brought to the table and hashed out, you know what I mean? And then you could have thought about it. You don't let it grow this big
No.
and decide in 2025, oh, we're going to stop all that.
Yeah. Do you know who benefits?
Because that's a huge impact.
I'm
So
just
who
picking
benefits?
I'm picking up on this right now. So when I tapped in health insurance there, the first thing that came up was the Colorado marketplace, because where are we from? Colorado. Our IP address is in Colorado.
Right.
The Colorado marketplace was the first one on the first page that showed up.
Okay.
They benefit. The state benefits.
Right. But do
Not the
they?
consumer,
Right.
because the consumers aren't getting any better health care usually through those marketplaces. It may be similar, but definitely not better, because you've eliminated competition.
But so is this one-to-one across the board? It affects every industry?
Yes,
Well, you know,
that's what they
Right,
wanted.
because the FCC oversees everything.
That's what they
right?
wanted.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and it is a ruling, right? But the 11th Court, District Court of Appeals said,
Yeah.
well, that's impeding free commerce. And we need to delay this. So they had said they were going to delay it for 1 year. And the 11th Circuit of Appeals said, no, you know, just we need to vacate this and throw it out. And so they told the FCC to go back to the drawing board, interestingly enough, to say,
Yeah.
you need to reevaluate this and how you want
It's
to
not legal.
implement this.
They have no drawing
In the
board.
TCPA documentation, the legislation for TCPA that came out in 1991, it said there must be express consent. And basically the 11th Court of Appeals had said, well, you're trying to redefine, as the FCC, you're trying to redefine something that's already been established.
Right.
And you're trying to make it more difficult. So,
That's why I said they should have thought about this 30 years ago, because since then you've hashed out so many other issues to get where you are right now. Like you guys have already set the guidelines
Yeah.
for the way we do business and operate today.
Just
real
fine and
time.
penalty people out of it,
And so,
and they don't. You know why? And I'll tell you why. Because it's hard to find these call centers, because they exist everywhere.
right.
They're all over the world. They can be in Jamaica, and now the country rules are different. Okay, well, they get shut down on one telecom provider. They open up another entity, another LLC in
Yeah.
Texas and Houston. Now they're a real entity living at a business, supposedly, and now they're trying to make new telecom contracts. They get a U.S. credit card on the LLC, on the EIN number. Listen, it's whack-a-mole.
mm-hmm.
That's whack-a-mole.
yeah, we can't tell you how many call center businesses we've seen shut down.
Yeah,
And then those same owners are back in.
Oh, I have no doubt.
yeah.
Like I'm aware.
So that one-to-one rule has been rescinded, like Ray was saying, which, thank God, because that was going to do nothing but just screw consumers over.
Right.
Especially if you're honestly in the market for looking for health insurance.
Well, yeah, and then it's like, who do they think they're protecting? Like you said, it's a decision made because somebody's mom or kid was like, oh my God, they called me and
Getting too many phone
I'm
calls.
getting too many. Well, quit putting your email on everything, and you know
Yeah.
that's why it's like, look, at this point,
Stop filling out all those
stop
forms.
putting it in for
if you don't
everything.
want calls.
Because that's the other thing. Look, don't get me wrong, I get
Yeah.
it. Everything you go to, it's like, oh, put your information here, dude. Just make a decision.
Yeah.
Like you either do or don't. But if you do,
You're going to get calls.
then just know that you're
You're
going to
gonna
get
get
calls.
marketed.
I know. I do it now, and I used to not do it for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I was like, just note to self, unsubscribe for that
Mm-hmm.
as soon as it comes through, and just let them know, take me off the list.
Right.
Be diligent. Be an adult. You know what I mean? Like, I might sign up for things to get like a free pass somewhere. There's things I do. We all do.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, or if I want information for something, or, you know what I mean? I understand what I'm doing. I'm opening the door to solicitation.
Yeah.
In the past, I didn't do it because I think it was before a lot of the regulation. There was 20 years ago when we first started getting this, 15 years ago, and it was a little less regulated. Not that I'm for all of the regulations. I just think we're more aware now. Like I have someone like Vicky who's like, hey, if you're going to do it, just know you need to unsubscribe. Or I have separate email addresses that I put in for some of these things.
And maybe that's part of the solution, Gene and Ray. So I was walking through the Cabo airport, and there's a box of cigarettes, and it says, "This will kill you."
Yeah.
Kills you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still selling cigarettes.
Absolutely.
But at least it says huge, big, bold letters. And maybe that's part of the solution. And it says, if you're filling out a form, you will get market calls.
Oh, that's what you should come up with. The new stripe.
The new stripe.
It'll be a stripe, a colored stripe, whether it's red,
Yeah.
whatever it might say. Solicitation incoming.
You will get called.
You will get called. And it's the stamp. That's what you guys should work on. The new stamp that everything that you apply or you put your email into, it says you will get called.
You will get called.
And
then,
once you know it's coming, then no one can come back and
Nobody can
complain
complain.
about it. That's what we need. We need that Surgeon
didn't you
General's
see
warning.
the thing that said it will kill you?
You guys will be the Internet General warning.
Yeah.
Surgeon General. But look, I'm aware of what
Market warning. Yeah.
what happens after I put that information in there now. But for years I avoided it just because of the spam. And there's such a negative stigma on, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like obviously spam, nobody wants that. You know
Right.
what I mean? But
Yeah.
I think throughout the years, it has gotten to a point where I'm sure it's really hard to deal with. It's you got it to combat something like that.
Why do we use the word spam?
I don't know. What is it? What does spam mean?
I don't know.
Like you're being spammed.
Do we want spam? Is that like ham?
Look, dude. I
Is that
hope
the
not,
ham?
because I like some spam.
Every once in a while.
Every now and then, I like a little musubi.
Get that can out, get that lob of meat, and
Oh.
slice it up and cook it. Spam.
Yeah.
Is it because
Well,
nobody
I wonder
likes?
why do they call it spam? Why is it called spam?
I don't know.
Why do you
like-
spam someone? Where does
I don't
that
know the
term
origin.
come
That's
from?
a good
the
one.
All right, we're
origin
gonna look
For
of
this
Noah
up.
to look up.
the
But
sperm.
Well,
spam. Sorry, the spam term. I wanted to
Well-
say spam and term at the same time. Sorry, guys.
while Noah's looking that up, the bad actors, might take your legitimate,
Oh my
hey,
God.
I legitimately agreed because I want to do research. I want to talk to some providers of health insurance. Well, the bad actors, they'll resell that list. They bought the list and they're just trying to, get that money. They're trying to recoup their cost. And, and then, although they're not supposed to resell the list, it happens.
Look, I know it happens. I've been in that space for a long time. Like we were talking about earlier, e-commerce and
Sure.
stuff, just closely associated with it, So I've watched people throughout the years get into big trouble, man, lose millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Because they were, using lists, exhausting lists, spamming lists. People build, because that was the game for a long time, was
yeah.
just we build a list, and then we're going to go out and sell your product or our list, sell your product or our list. And they would literally pimp this list out over and over. And so you don't know where you were on the pecking order. They could have already ran this list 10 times that week, launched
Right.
big sales, and they're charging people millions of dollars, to run a launch, on a sale of a product, and you don't even know. And then you trust these people. Boom, they launch out on this list that has a couple 100,000 people, and multiple you get together. All of a sudden, you're getting spammed because they've already sent to this list multiple times. So I can see where, that there's people who are definitely abusing, these lists throughout the years.
Yeah, I mean, one of the players we knew back in the day was USA Data, and they had an office in Golden, Colorado. Surprisingly enough, USA Data was the one that compiled data with, are you double income, your economic and your geographic and your demographic information, right? And then you could go to USA Data and say, I need a list of 100,000 people that meet this criteria. They're dinks. I need them in Colorado. I need them in Florida. I need them wherever. right? And they were like, oh yeah, that's $2,000 for that list.
Right.
You pay them, but there was no guarantee that they didn't sell the list to
Right.
8 other people. Right?
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
List
It's like I knew
brokers.
good people that built reputable businesses and were selling products.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's like you're getting going. You want to continue to push that product. And then you go to someone, they're like, hey, I have, you know,
I got a
some
list.
of them had 10 million people on a list.
Of course
you know,
they did.
and more. Some of them more. You know what I mean? They were huge lists. But you don't know where you were that month. You
That's
don't
right.
know if they had launched once a week or if they were exhausting this list
Right.
multiple times a week, you know, and just launching. Yeah, they're rotating through it, but you know what I mean? It's easy to go through a couple million people when you're doing a couple 100,000 times at a time.
Well, and how many call centers are actively working those same lists at the same time?
Right. And then next thing you know, your product,
Or email.
people are like, "Oh, that's a boo-boo product," you know, because
Yeah.
they spammed us.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you start getting this negative.
All right, I'm going to give you the pleasure of reading off this
Oh,
description of what spam is.
the term spam comes from a sketch on the Monty Python show Monty Python's Flying Circus. In the sketch, Vikings chant the name of the canned meat product, spam, so loudly that they drowned out other conversations.
Spam.
I can't believe I didn't know that.
That's where it came
How
from.
many times have we watched that skit?
Monty
You have?
Python.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't.
Oh my. Yeah, I grew up on that.
Yeah.
You know what's funny, dude? I know Monty Python, but I didn't. I guess it's where I grew up. You know, like
That's where it
I don't
came
know.
from.
I didn't have a whole lot of access to. I watched a lot of movies growing up, but I have been thinking lately, like I need to catch up on some of this because people reference Monty Python a lot, and when I tell them that I didn't know about that, they're like, "Dude, you would definitely love that," because I have a sense of humor where you know.
You grew up in Louisiana, right?
Yeah,
You know, that's-
and so they're like, "What? You grew up there? Like, really? You didn't escape to Monty Python? Like, that's not part of your, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know that humor?" And I know some of it. You know,
I
I've
mean,
watched
and
some
it's
of it.
straight from the Wikipedia, so we know it's true. For sure. Right? Derived from the 1970s spam sketch of BBC sketch comedy television series Monty Python's Flying Circus. That's where it came from. That's where the word spam came from.
Yeah, explanation.
Monty
The term
Python.
spam is used to describe unwanted messages.
Yeah. Monty Python. Thank you, Monty Python,
Yep.
for our life today.
Yeah, I need to get a little bit more Monty Python in my life.
John
There's a few
Cleese
things.
and Terry Gilliam.
Listen, that
and the
surprised
crew,
all three of
yeah.
us at this table. We had no
Yeah,
idea where
I-
that term came
I
from.
would've-
Because spam is not, like, we know spam is canned ham.
I knew it didn't come from that.
Yeah.
Well, I hoped it didn't. You know, but yeah, I know it is canned. Is it ham?
I feel like we should pull up the sketch. Do you think it's on
I
YouTube?
Well, I think we should post it on.
Just go to
our-
videos. You're already there. Oh, I thought.
Yeah,
it
well,
would
there's a
pull up.
1 minute one, right?
Yeah, well, this would be hilarious. Let's see.
Oh.
Let's see what people.
Oh, this is just somebody.
Oh no, that's just something. I thought it would have pulled up the skit.
We'll do the whole Monty Python thing.
Yeah.
We'll grab that.
Monty Python. But yeah, well, you guys are in
We're in an interesting space with spam.
Yeah, I mean,
For
so what do
sure.
you do moving forward? Like, yeah, where do you see it going, and how do you continue to evolve and combat,
Well, it's like we were saying earlier, right? The business is continually evolving,
Right.
right? The technology is continually evolving, and we have to be able to combat it, right? And you have to adjust, right? The classic thing, those that don't adjust in business don't survive.
right?
And so, right, like literally we have in our development queue is we're talking about different ways we can adjust, the manage, monitor, and put in tools in place to help mitigate that.
Right, 'cause I
so that
mean-
we're not overusing any one number and monitor.
Or because you could continue to throw money at it, right? Buy more numbers, rotate through that, but is that the long-term solution?
No, it's it's an interim solution because it's going to continually be evolving.
Right,
Right, just like people are using more SMS. And,
right.
some people do want to use
I think
a
it's
phone.
right here.
Some people do want to use an email.
I think it's right here.
I can't hear the other conversations. Wonderful spam.
This is what we're dealing with. And they use the term. It's actually a term that we use in modern culture
You're
today.
being spammed.
Spammed.
But why
And
use
it
for
comes
that?
from
why
this.
why do we use it?
I mean, maybe
Because
we
it
just
was
got
drowning
pumped.
out. It was drowning out the
actual
other
message.
conversations.
Yeah.
Right.
It's drowning out conversations you want to hear. Spam. I didn't know. Honestly,
No,
this
I had no
is,
idea.
I'm told.
I don't know.
Now,
I
maybe,
thought it was an acronym to be completely honest.
Now maybe Google AI just brought us down a weird rabbit hole that
I don't
it
think
wants
so.
to sidetrack us on. I don't believe that to
What
be the
did
case.
Grok say?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, because it also referenced email, right? It wasn't just phone calls.
Yeah. And we're using this in fair use. We're not going to play the whole clip, obviously.
Written and spam performed by Spam Terror.
Michael Palin.
They're all
Yeah.
spams. Spam cheese.
Yep, John Cleese.
Spam
Spam,
Chapman.
spam, Chapman.
How hilarious is that?
I love it.
Well, now we have something new to talk about to our customers, don't we?
We know the origin of
We know the
spam
origin of
designations.
spam. Thanks, Monty Python.
I don't even think I realized they were. So it was a series. I thought Monty Python was like a
weekly-
movie.
Yeah, it's a
I've seen
weekly
the
series.
movie.
70s
Yeah, they produced movies, right? They
and movies. Yeah.
But they also had like
They had a weekly,
shows, a weekly
30-minute
show.
Yeah, that's what that
See-
came
see
from.
what I'm saying? We didn't have that. Sorry,
Yeah.
our cable didn't provide Monty
Python.
Well, did
I've
they
seen a
have
few
public
episodes.
television in Louisiana? That's
A little
That's
bit.
where it was.
But BBC
on-
wasn't on. That wasn't one of the channels I grew up watching.
no, it wasn't on BBC, but they like republished it from
Yeah,
the
I
BBC,
don't think so.
and it was
Look, dude, I had like 5 channels.
9:30 at night.
3,
on
7,
Fox,
4,
CBS, you know. And I
2.
can tell you Monty Python wasn't on any of it.
None of it. None of it.
A lot of wrestling.
alligator
what else?
wrestling.
We had some, you know, wrestling, like, you know, the old school. I used to stay up
WWF.
and watch WWE.
F.
Yeah, probably.
When it was
World Wrestling
WWF.
Federation.
Yes.
Yeah, it just
Was it
wasn't.
Mike McMahon? Wasn't that who that was? WWF, Mike McMahon.
But yeah, I grew up watching some wrestling. I mean, there was a few things. A lot of, I'd stay up late Friday nights for like horror stuff. And then once, I remember being a kid, like when VHS came
Vince
out.
McMahon. Sorry.
Yeah, Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Spent most of like my time and money renting. Probably I liked a lot of horror films. Now I don't watch any horror films, which is weird. It stresses me out to the max.
You're talking about the old video shows, the old video.
Well, like, you know,
rentals.
Freddy
could
Krueger,
rent,
yeah,
yeah.
when VHS came out, but even like old Dracula, like when when they converted.
Nosferatu.
Yeah, man, I'm talking like it wasn't in. Some of them weren't in English. You know, I don't know what they were speaking, but it wasn't subtitles or anything. But you know what I mean? Like, just watching these old movies, old productions, theater. Yeah, grew up watching a lot of that.
Yeah.
And then Eddie Murphy Raw hit, and my life was forever changed. And I was like, holy mo, there's
And in
comedy.
the meantime, you missed Monty Python.
Missed it.
Missed it.
But I watched Monty Python the movie. Like, they had a movie. You know,
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I always thought that was hilarious.
It was wacky.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, it was crazy.
Slapstick comedy, just like
Yes,
they.
the comedy was just something you can go to school and, like,
Yeah.
kind of, you know.
Banter with your buddies.
Yes, and even if they didn't see it, it was super funny.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
no one knew where you getting it from.
So this is where we're at, man. This is where we're at with caller ID management and spam management.
So yeah.
Potential spam. Does that mean
So how do you move forward with that? Like, how do you
you just grind it? You just
I
grind
get
it
it.
out. You adapt. You make the changes that you're.
can you use
you're quite-
AI for that? What's going to happen? Does
don't
AI?
know.
Is there any way to like use AI to find what's their algorithm?
I'm sure
Do they
the
not have
telecom-
an algorithm? Do they not have something to look out for?
Listen, I ran into a telecom colleague that I didn't know, and she worked herself out of a job because they built all the automation processes to deal with whatever they were dealing with at Comcast. Literally worked herself out of a job, automating all the solutions. So, I mean, I'm sure AI is going to be tying into these telecom providers in no time, and then essentially taking over the control mechanism for who can call who. And then we're going to be in a real weird spot. 1984. George Orwell, welcome.
Bro.
Oh, you can't call anybody. You've called somebody 30 times today. You have no more calls left today. But I pay my bill. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. You're an abusive caller.
You're an
You have
abusive
been-
caller. Yeah. I don't know. We don't know where it's going to go. But if you don't adapt and change, then you're going to die on the vine. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So that's what we do for our customers. We we can adapt and change, and we keep pulse of the industry. You know, Ray has a lot of contacts. I have a lot of contacts. We keep in contact with a lot of different people just to identify what they're doing. What are you doing to manage things? And then, of course, they've spun off all these services. Our colleagues have spun off services to then offer phone number reputation scrubbing, litigator lists, so you're not calling attorneys that are on
Right.
So then you can buy that list. That list is $10,000, but it might keep you out of $100 million losses.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Yeah, it's worth it,
Just got to pay the money to stay out of the way.
I guess.
Is that the right way to do it?
I mean, that's business.
It kind of is.
You know, depends on what industry you're in, but yeah, what I say, you got to pay to play.
Pay to
you
play.
know? So I mean, it's a way of looking at it. You know,
You got to pay to play.
people pay money to get ahead of a problem. You know what I mean?
Are we talking about craps?
Well,
Don't pass line?
no pass.
Got to pay to play.
Got to pay.
Got to bet one way or the other.
You know, hedge your bets, man.
What other analogies you can come up there?
But I mean, yeah,
Well, I was just thinking, like with maybe not AI, but machine learning.
Yeah.
Right. We can point. We can point it at our databases and
You're not
look at
loud
the
enough.
data, and then be able to make decisions, and those threshold decisions, and then help make life easier for our clients. So
Yeah. So we adjust. We make changes. It's not always the right decision sometimes, but we're trying to get as much information in front of our customers as we can, so that they can make decisions that affect their business. Because this is a day-to-day effort.
right.
It's not just set it and forget it. It's day-to-day. People change markets. Their lists change. They get different lists from other people that are less quality or higher quality, whatever it is. And they're legitimately doing those things. We just try and make sure our hammer is really shiny.
Right.
Right.
All right.
We just
that's
make sure
pretty
the
cool.
hammer works.
I literally was asking one of our clients what they would like to see on this tool, as we're in the development phase, right? We get to ask them, and they get to have input, to help drive the product forward too. So it's not just something we're creating in a vacuum.
Yeah, it's in process, in progress, work in progress, for sure. And it's going to continually change because, like you were saying, those metrics, we were saying 50 calls, and they were getting triggered on 36. They were getting spam calls on 36. So, we don't know.
Right.
The nerds might be changing things. They might have introduced, Grok already into the telecom database and say, how do we make this better? And Grok analyzes, the billion records and goes, oh, well, you're not doing this. Do this. Analyze it every 15 minutes instead of every 3 hours, or whatever it might be.
And then we'll have to identify that pattern and adjust to meet that.
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
It's a game of whack-a-mole.
It's a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier.
You know?
It is what it is. Got to pay to play, right?
Yeah. Right.
Got to pay to play. Guys, let's wrap
Fellas,
this up.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. letting
Happy
me
Fat
sit in.
Tuesday.
I'm always learning something.
Tuesday. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for chiming in and watching. And if you like this stuff, please subscribe. Bye, everybody.